It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Today's Ag Spotlight video is sponsored by Focus Management. Old structures, methods, and approaches can't keep up with the pace of change that's upon us, nor the speed of response and adaptation that it's needed to do better than merely survive. We must move with the times. And so, for these times, Focus Management has created Rapid Agile Deployment, an online, virtual, short-cycle planning and deployment process. For more information, go to focusmanagement.ca. Hi, I'm Chrissy Wozniak, and welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. Today, our guest is someone that I've known for quite some time, and honestly, he's one of my major business mentors. He's inspired me in my career more than he knows, until now, I guess, and his teachings have actually spilled into my family and farm life as well, in terms of role clarity, responsibilities, and efficiency of our systems. His insight into the inner workings of a company have been so fascinating to learn. I'd like to welcome you, Fred Pidsadny of Focus Management.
Well, thank you, Chrissy, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure being a part of this interview.
Thanks. So I'll give you a bit of a background. Fred worked with a company that I was a sales manager at, and that's how I was able to get to know him. Our upper management team at the company was a little bit disorganized, and we all had a big chip on our shoulders. So Fred came in and put us to work. Despite our skepticism, we made it through the weekly pre-work before our sessions. What happened through our journey with Fred, though, and his team was nothing short of miraculous. The department heads that couldn't see eye to eye anymore at the beginning, we were suddenly able to openly talk respectfully to each other. And we're really able to sort out not only our differences, but we also built a structure that none of us could have imagined possible. So we walked into our first session. We were a group of rogue firefighters defending our turf, and walked away a few months later with a system that we could rely on for the company. And it all came down to one important key: the great execution of what matters most. So can you tell us all about that, Fred?
I sure will, Chrissy. First, I'll just maybe explain who Focus is, and then we'll get into the explanation of the great execution of what matters most. Thank you for that very gracious and kind introduction. It's also nice to hear that Focus had a very positive impact and one that's memorable. Let me start with who Focus is and what we do, the clients we work with, and where we are located. We are a team of facilitators that work with leadership teams to help them do 2 things. One is to create or update their business plans, whether they're long-range, multi-year plans, annual plans, or project plans. And secondly, to help them with the execution of those plans, the step that most leadership teams struggle with and often results in what we call the execution gap, the difference between what was supposed to happen and what actually did happen. Our job is to work with the leader and the team to close that gap. Over the last 21 years, we've worked with leadership teams in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, with publicly owned, privately owned, and family businesses. We have worked in 39 different sectors, including agri, where clients include Butler Buildings, GGS, who manufacture greenhouses, and Tascodome Products, and Maple Lodge Farms, the second largest chicken producer and processor in Canada. We've worked with clients in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. We are a Canadian firm located in Ontario in what is known as the Greater Golden Horseshoe area because the geographical area is shaped like a horseshoe. It's at the western tip of Lake Ontario, and it stretches from Toronto in the east to Hamilton in the most western part, where it then curves again and ends up in Niagara Falls. So you got that horseshoe shape. It's called the Golden Horseshoe because 50% of Ontario's population live, work, and play in the GGHA, and thus making it an $8 million people market in a geographic area that's only 1% of the area of Ontario. The provincial government offices are in Toronto, the province's capital. Focus is in a town called Grimsby, which is in the Niagara district, with some of the best fruit farms and vineyards in the world, and over 50 wineries making world-class wines. We, in fact, are becoming known as Napa East. My family roots in farming are in farming, but not in Ontario, but on wheat farms in our prairie provinces, Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Other parts of the family migrated to Hamilton, where many worked in International Harvester and Firestone, both suppliers to the agri-market. It is indeed a small world. Okay, now that you folks have a better understanding of focus and my roots, let's get to Chrissy's question. What does our value proposition, the great execution of what matters most, mean? Like most people, business leaders have dreams or a vision for their business, to grow, to be the best, to live by their values and principles, to attract and to keep the best talent, and above all, great customer satisfaction and loyalty. To achieve their visionary goals, leaders and their teams create plans, long-term, short-term, project plans, in some cases, quarterly, monthly, weekly, even daily shift plans. Sometimes the plans are very formal and presented to the owners, the board, or to the senior leadership team. Some are more informal. Some are carried around in their heads, or a combination of all. The sad, even shocking truth is that most of the plans do not get fully implemented, especially the long-term plans. And that is based on research that has been published in highly respected sources like the Harvard Business Report. It also aligns with my 40 years of experience working in businesses and subsequently as a facilitator. When that happens, leaders are faced with what I referred to earlier as the execution gap, the distance between what was supposed to happen and what actually happened. 75% of organizations struggle with the implementation of their plans, 75%. So you are not alone. So what causes the execution gap and how do we fix it? This interview isn't long enough to cover all of the reasons, but I can tell you the number one reason. The same research that identified the 75% struggle with plan execution also identified 17 major reasons. If we had the time, most of you could actually identify them based on your own experience. But you might be surprised at the one that's at the top of the list, and the top by far. It was simply that people did not clearly understand what actions they were to take, what decisions they needed to make that would support the plan. Worse yet, most didn't understand the plan. Some weren't even aware of it. Senior leaders, in some cases, when asked, couldn't identify the top 3 goals or articulate the mission or vision of the organization. In simpler terms, they didn't get it, they didn't own it, unless they didn't do it. This is becoming more critical as the millennials enter the workforce, because they say that understanding the purpose and goals of the organization and being able to contribute is important to them. It motivates them. So how do we fix the number one obstacle to strategy execution? With 3 words: clarity, alignment, and commitment. Let's start with clarity. In every step of your planning process, you must make your plan execution ready by making every element crystal clear. Fuzziness is the enemy of execution. Remember that. Fuzziness is the enemy of execution. Use concrete and real world terms. Which of these is clearer? We'll optimize the customer experience. You heard a lot about that stuff. We'll optimize the customer experience. Or listen to this one. We will be recognized using industry standards and benchmarks as the leader in customer retention. The last one's a lot clearer. Now for the second part of the solution, alignment. Everyone's accountabilities at every level, starting at the top, need to be aligned with the organizational goals. If they're not clear at the top, it doesn't get any better throughout the organization. It gets worse and worse. Here's an example. For a maintenance manager that's responsible for production equipment, one of the goals could be no more than 5% of late shipments to the customer will be due to production equipment downtime. That's very precise with a low fuzziness factor. The third part of the solution, commitment to take action. Everyone must be given the right level of authority to make decisions and to take action. Here's an example. The maintenance manager guy. Again, the maintenance manager can shut down the production line without asking permission from the production manager to remove and maintain key and critical equipment. The maintenance manager is empowered to make a decision on the timing of the maintenance and then to advise, not ask the production manager for permission. You see, he has the power to make things happen. Now with clarity, alignment, and authority, the maintenance manager will understand why his work is important, because the organization's vision is to be recognized as the leader in customer retention. What the accountability is, no more than 5% of late shipments will be due to production equipment downtime, and that there is the authority to get the job done. The maintenance manager will now get it, own it, and do it. Clarity, alignment, and commitment. And that, Chrissy, is how the great execution of what matters most happens.
That's awesome. Great explanation. So can you tell us, I know we did a survey on Ag Twitter recently. Can you tell us about what you learned from those results?
I sure can. We asked Chrissy 3 questions. The first question was, do you have a plan in place to handle your most pressing issues? The second question was, how confident are you in achieving those plans? And then the third question asked about what you focus on in the plans. I was not necessarily shocked at this, but 55% of the respondents did not have a plan. 55%. 10% did. They have a plan that was mapped out, and the others were in the process of putting a plan together. I'm a little bit surprised, but not shocked, because there's a lot going on in this world today. And putting a plan together when there's so many variables and so many things happening is a difficult challenge. However, you got to do a plan. You got to have a plan in place. In terms of confidence, the level that were completely confident was 30%. So only 30% were completely confident that they'll be able to achieve their plan, with 40% saying kind of confident, and the other 30% not very confident to no confident at all. So here we got a situation, if we're talking about the same organization, then no plan, not much confidence. The good news of this was that the plans are predominantly focused on making sure that the well-being of the people in the organization. 59% said, I'm focused on the well-being of my people. Growing my customer base was 24%. Supply of goods and services was 24%, with threats from competition only 1%. So that's what we learned. So we've got, there's a challenge out there, Chrissy, right? Lots of organization with no plans, Secondly, lack of confidence. So how do we, in fact, bump that confidence? Well, it's all about, look, get a plan in place and make sure that you're executing well.
And we mean, manufacturers in the industry, we mean service providers, and we also mean farms too. A lot of farms forget that they're businesses too, and they go through the exact same problems as a manufacturer does, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So the one thing I hear all the time is there just isn't time to work on the company. There are too many fires to put out every day. So how do you suggest that business leaders tackle this issue?
Well, I've got a theory on that, Chrissy. I've been around for 40 years, and I think some leaders get very good and, in fact, like putting out fires. Mm-hmm. So I almost think that sometimes they create them by just doing things that end up being a fire, and all of a sudden they're in there, problem solving and providing solutions. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's an important thing to do. Obviously, you need to have a good problem solvers in the organization. But less and less time has to be spent on technical problem solving as you rise through the ranks in an organization. And you need to spend more time on the management of the organization. And, there's never enough time, it seems, to do these kinds of things. You got to make time. It's all about trying to increase the amount of time that you spend on the business versus in the business. We all rise through the ranks, right? So we're good salespeople, marketing people, production people, quality control people, maintenance people, research people. And we like those functions. We like our roots. We like dropping down occasionally and get our hands dirty in the operations. Yeah. But I think leaders need to recognize that there's lots of other people in the organization. And by pushing down the authority levels to give them more action planning and decision-making authority, you might be surprised as to what people will do when they know they can actually make decisions that make a difference. Right. So I think it's all about pushing down the authority and really at the senior level, I mean, you got to focus more on the business versus in the business.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Giving people the power to be proud of their job, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why do you do this? What lights you up?
Well, I got to tell you, what lights me up, and I just reflected back to your introduction that said that we made a difference in your organization. Mm-hmm. We made a positive impact, and one that's memorable, right? I mean, you had positive memories of that experience. So when I hear that 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, when I meet a client somewhere, maybe at one of the wineries, it just lights me up. And especially when clients come back and say, Fred, we need you back. Even after 5 years, 10 years, sometimes we got to do the strategy refresh. We got to get more aligned. Our organization has grown. We've changed the management structure. We've added new people, and we kind of got to retool. So it lights me up when people remember the good experience, is memorable, and when we're asked back.
Yeah. That's incredible. And I know you definitely have a heart to serve people. And I watched you through our entire process light up when we got something, when we finally understood, right? When, you'd see the little light bulbs above our heads go, oh yeah, that's right. Yes. You would glow when those happened and you saw that happen, right? The cool thing though was that you never pushed us to get there. That's the one thing that I thought was really interesting through all of it is that you have this discipline to not get frustrated at the teams either, right? You let everybody learn at their own pace until that light bulb goes off. And I just thought that was really cool.
Well, what I learned a long time ago, Chrissy, is that people don't resist change as much as they resist being changed. So when I created this firm, I was absolutely adamant that we would not be like typical consultants who come in, study your organization, write the great big, what we call the OBR, the one big report, make sure the invoice is really big, send it to you and say, adios, have fun, good luck. So we don't do that. We don't do studies. We don't do analyses. We don't do reports, and we never will. Yeah. What we do is work with organizations, with their leadership teams, We bring in a recipe, we guide them, we coach, we facilitate. Sometimes we just step back, as you know, and let them struggle and step in at the right time, because they got to create it themselves. It's got to be theirs. They have to own it. Remember about clarity, alignment, commitment? Same thing happens when we facilitate. It's got to be clear for them. They need to be aligned to it and they need to be committed to it. It's not the facilitator's plan, it's theirs.
Yeah, and that's important, right? It's not what Fred wants for the company. It's what, the leaders, what the employees want for the company, what the owner wants for the company.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's important. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And if anyone is interested in learning more about focus management, head over to northamericanegg.com or focusmanagement.ca, and you'll find the links in the show notes below as well. So thanks again, Fred, and hopefully I'll see you again.
My pleasure, Chrissy, anytime. Bye now.
The way we conduct business in agriculture has endured a drastic change. Our handshake industry has traditionally been face-to-face, but with the cancellation of in-person events and farm shows, everyone has had to adapt, from farms to manufacturers to service providers. With a dizzying array of marketing and digital business choices, you need to make the right decisions or risk not being seen at all. If you need advice or a customized plan for your business, don't hesitate to reach out to me at chrissywozniak.com or chrissy.info, because that's easier to spell. Don't risk not pivoting your business. Find the path that will take you into the digital space and be seen by our industry.